MDMA guided sessions are perhaps the greatest breakthrough of our lifetime for rewiring your nervous system, for peak performance, and for healing trauma, PTSD, and other mental health challenges rapidly, especially extreme anxiety. And I've seen it happen over and over and over. So today I'm going to break down the why it's so powerful, why it's a very important tool that you should consider if you are on any of those journeys. Of course, using it very safely and understanding the laws and jurisdictions of your area. Secondly, we're going to talk about the what. What's it like to go on an MDMA journey? What are the experiences? What are the side effects? What are the risks? And which is the third thing, also the safety and the risk factors, okay? Which is surprisingly very minimal, but we're going to get to that, okay? But let's start. Why should you consider doing a private MDMA session or even a ceremonial session? Well, first of all, MDMA floods your body with love and joy and empathy and a sense of safety. That's an empathogen. It's not technically a psychedelic according to many definitions, okay? So what happens is you get flooded with all these amazing feelings. Then your nervous system basically feels safe to handle some of these scary things, especially if you have a trained guide. So I I can't emphasize this enough, on your first experience and early experiences, you want to have a trained guide. And a guide that knows you, that you feel very, very safe with. And here's why. Though, when you're on the medicine, you're going to have these feelings of love and empathy and joy. But if you don't have any guidance to deal with some of the other stuff that might be there that you can get free of, you can literally get free. I had a client where we freed her of 5 different traumas that she had carried for 15 plus years, some of them for almost 40 years. All right. And we went through one by one while we're on the medicine, because what happens is the medicine gives you 2 major windows that you really want to be aware of. The first window is your acute subjective experience. And this is where your nervous system is flooded with more neuroplasticity, more joy, more heightened state than you've ever had in your life. There's nothing like it. Just trust me on that. Until you try it, you can't even imagine how good you're going to feel. Like most of my clients will say, this is the best they've ever felt. And so as you're in this heightened state, what happens is now we can access the subconscious safely, and we can go in, your protector parts have relaxed. Literally, I had a client, I was trying to do a session with her, but it was virtual, and we were just doing it without the medicine. Well, I tried to access her subconscious in the meditation, and guess what? This wall of black steel armor just popped up. That's what she said she saw. So I was like, all right, we aren't going to be able to access the subconscious as deeply. We need a little bit more powerful tool to get there and to heal some of those deeper wounds and patterns that she had as leading her business, right? So, in which we eventually did and got her to the other side. But the other aspect that I want to mention is that window, that 3 to 6 hour window. This is why it's so important to have a trained guide. It's basically like in that window, your snow-capped mountains just got a fresh coated white powder. But if no one goes down no one skis down or snowboards down, guess what? No new grooves are created. And you got to create those new neural grooves while you have the optimal opportunity. Okay, and you got to bring up, invite a trained guide, especially if you're dealing with some trauma, that's trauma informed, that you feel very, very safe with, and that knows how to help you move the trauma through you. And I typically use NLP and IFS type models and a little bit of somatic experiencing. But then I will help clients move it through their body and go back to that scary moment that their body wants to deal with. So I'll prompt them. I'll be like, hey, what does your body want to deal with today? What does your body want to release? What's a memory, a story, a fear, a trauma, overwhelm, whatever. And their body will say that as I've helped them access the subconscious. And then we'll safely release it and integrate it. And we'll do some inner child work. We'll hold. Like if it's, I had one client, she lost a pet when she was 3 years old. Well, guess what? When she was 3 years old and that pet was kind of frozen, she found her little bunny frozen. Well, guess what? She held that little version of herself. And that memory she had totally forgotten about and repressed, by the way. But it was in her nervous system, very much so. So she's holding that version of herself until that version of herself relaxed and released. And I just invited her to invite that version of herself to share what she needed to share, for her to pour in love and speak to her heart and just love on her. and create a safe space to validate, acknowledge, and process her feelings. Sure enough, within an hour and a half, we got through 3 significant traumas in that case, and she had some significant PTSD, and she was free. And she's in a state of joy and bliss and freedom and connection with her body that she couldn't get to, because what happened, the trauma had gotten in her nervous system. And what is trauma? Trauma is just where your nervous system gets overwhelmed. So she had experienced overwhelm and didn't know how to get on the other side of that, right? And your body naturally almost freezes. So those things almost become frozen in your nervous system for decades, or many people to the rest of their life until they deal with it. Okay, so that acute window is the best window that you will ever find in your life for dealing with some of this deep stuff. There's no other experience in life that we know of that gives you that sort of window right now. That's why it's so powerful, right? And that's also true with ketamine, psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, and ibogaine, and ultimately likely ayahuasca, but some of the research hasn't been done on that fully. But it's such a powerful window, and that's why you can do so much work. You can literally do 2 or 3 years worth of therapy in a single session. And I see it happen in the work I do with the high performers and high achievers that I work with. So that's the first window. The second window is your critical period reopening. This is up to 2 weeks, or a little bit over 2 weeks actually, for MDMA and psilocybin. And you'll see the Nardo study that I've linked in the video here. You can go down, read it. It's obviously a clinical research document. So depending on if you like academic research papers, you may not enjoy reading it, but the main part of it is that critical period reopening. The equivalent of it is like your nervous system is ultimately like softened and flooded with neuroplasticity, like when you're 4 years old, right? When you're up to like age 7, your brain is in an alpha state, which means it's almost in a hypnotic state, and it can passively receive and absorb information. Like my daughter's 3 years old right now, or almost 3. I'll say something and she'll literally repeat it back. She may not understand what she's saying, but she'll repeat it back, and it gets there, right? So her nervous system is remembering, her brain is remembering. So it's a really valuable window, and that's why after my sessions, what I'll do is I'll guide the client to continue to do yoga, to do meditation, to do breath work, to do sound baths, to do lighter exercise, less strenuous things, avoid high stress people, toxic people, whatever, for those 2 weeks, because you're resetting, you're recalibrating your nervous system back from like this heightened state of stress and anxiety down into a calmer, centered, relaxed state, right? So that's a very, very valuable period that you want to anchor in and create and anchor in new habits that bring you back to your desired state, okay? So those 2 windows are really, really valuable, and nothing else in our modern neuroscience studies, curriculum, research has shown anything else like that. Now, you can get help for PTSD with neurofeedback, but it might take 20 or 30 sessions. So you're looking, 20 or 30 hours type deal. You're looking at a lot of time. EMDR also works in many cases, but very slowly. Well, we can do equivalent of 2 to 3 years worth of therapy and actually get you on the other side in most cases of PTSD and heavy levels of trauma. In fact, I haven't found anyone that I've not been able to help at this point. And then the second part is for the peak performance side. So if you're a peak performer, a lot of my clients, actually all of them essentially, are high achievers, right? And they're entrepreneurs, they're leaders, they want to get on the other side. And what happens is when we do this medicine is we can also pre-wire your nervous system for your higher self to show up in your fullest, most vibrant, most powerful, most magnetic self, so that you bring your best to the world. And we'll literally do some alter ego work in there. So we'll help you find your powerful alter ego, and we'll name that version of you, and we'll ask that version of you to lead your life going forward. And then I'll guide through meditation and visualization, so that version of you is leading the days, the weeks, the months, the years ahead, and you know how to access that version of you. So it almost is just like a subconscious going downhill in the weeks and months ahead, because you already know how to access him or her. Okay, so that's how, or what we do and why it's so powerful. Okay, because you can do so much deep work. I don't see a problem on money trauma, PTSD, limiting beliefs, limiting stories, fears, doubts, anxiety, depression even, that we can't significantly help, if not radically reverse, through MDMA. I will mention a couple other resources, tons of podcasts on this. I've got some links. Check out my recommended resources link in this video for additional research. You can look at Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. There's also plenty of podcasts that I've got there. We'll talk about safety here in a few as well, but also no, it's really, really safe. You're in good hands, which we'll get to in a second. But I want to mention one more thing. If this is intriguing for you, just apply. I've got a little application link down below. Go ahead and apply. Be really honest as well with medications, things that you're on, things that you want to get to on the other side of. And then also you can see some of the stories of people I've helped in the links below of just rewired one-on-ones and retreats. So I have retreats as well where we do some of this action or do some of these activities as well to help rewire your nervous system. All right. So secondly, what it is, what's it like going on an MDMA session, right? What's the experience? What are the highs, the lows, etc. So first part is the preparation. Preparation is very important. Okay, and that will look like, in many cases, I'll recommend supplements. So 5-HTP, GABA, NAD are all very helpful. We'll also do some magnesium, and that just helps your nervous system kind of have a much better experience, have much less, essentially no serotonin hangover. Like most of my clients, they have no downside the next day. And I really think you can avoid that essentially entirely as long as you supplement properly, you're in good health, or you do the things that we outline as well. But what it's like, so the preparation, we'll set intentions. We'll have a conversation. We'll do a discovery call. Make sure that it's right for you. Make sure it's the right experience. Make sure that you know how the experience is going to go, what the risks are. And we'll talk about set and setting. Set and setting is like, hey, do you feel safe in this environment? Where is this? We want a very, very safe feeling environment because that's very important for us to be able to access the deeper layers of your subconscious and to bring healing and freedom, internal freedom, so you show up in your highest and best self. So set and setting, and that will involve, for me, I'll also bring in music. I'll bring in a little speaker. We might bring in some headphones. We'll have obviously good water. We want to avoid, for the previous 4 hours, we want to minimize caffeine. If not avoid it entirely, avoid food for at least 4 hours beforehand, ideally 5 or more. And then also avoid anti-inflammatories. And then if you're taking any other medications, which we'll get to, then we have to be aware of those and make sure they're not contraindicating medicines that might interact or just mute or numb the effects of MDMA, which SSRIs and others often will, right? So, but in the journey, what happens with the journey? So we'll start, and the journey, the beginning part will last about 45 minutes, and we'll do some meditation, some intention setting. I'll help you access and connect with your subconscious, get your conscious mind to relax, which is a big thing. Because we want your body to speak. That's one of the biggest intents of MDMA, is get your body to speak, to share, to let us know what it wants, right? Because your body knows, all right? So during that session, the first part, we'll also take the medicine. We'll take generally the dosing. I don't dose and I don't prescribe, so just for clarity, but oftentimes the first dose is about 100 milligrams, second dose is about 60 or 80. Just depends on your sensitivity, things like that we can discuss, and I can connect you with sources on that, right? So then the next piece, as the medicine kicks in, you'll start having a little tingly feeling. You'll kind of start feeling a little buzz and just connection to your body, and feelings of safety will start flooding in, okay? And during this experience, what happens is, it takes about an hour for the medicine to kick in, sometimes about 45 minutes, but usually right at about an hour. As the medicine starts kicking in, you start noticing that, and then we'll start doing the deep work really about an hour and a half in. But we're doing intention setting, we're connecting, I'm learning your story, I'm learning what you already know is there. Every single time, there's stuff that we've dealt with that we knew was there, and then there's stuff that people had totally forgotten about, repressed, suppressed, whatever, that we got to as well. And it was really good. And it freed them from whatever they were holding on to, okay? then as you go through the journey, we'll do the deep work. And the deep work, honestly, takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to do. So in the session, the deep work is only about like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then on the other end, then we'll integrate it, and then we'll anchor you to the higher self. So actually that might take another hour. So let's say total of 2.5 total hours of really deep subconscious work. But we'll get to stuff that you couldn't ever imagine getting to without the medicine. And it's because that feeling of safety is so strong and so present and so powerful that you can get to places that you couldn't get to. And that's why FDA's labeled it a breakthrough drug and is expected to be decriminalized in the US by the end of 2024. And the Veterans Administration and countless other organizations are massive advocates for it because it has the single greatest potential, along with psilocybin, for helping treat some previously unthought of cures for depression and PTSD that we had no cure, no treatment, no real hope for creating breakthroughs and healing for the toughest cases. Now, obviously more moderate cases, sure. But so I'm just talking about the darkest, most difficult cases, which is what my wife had, and that's what drew me into this work, which I have the link of our story from my website on in the video notes as well, if you want to read that, which is how psychedelics saved our marriage and gave us our life back. So let's go through the second phase. All right, as the medicine's kicking in, we're working through this deep stuff. Then what will happen? I might give you a little bit of magnesium. Just to help reduce jaw tension. One of the only side effects that I typically see is a little bit of jaw tension. Okay. By the way, you never want to take more than 200 milligrams of MDMA in a session. And the reason is beyond that, it starts having higher states of neurotoxicity. Okay. So you don't want to go beyond that. And also you don't want to do it regularly, because regularly meaning I wouldn't do it more than 4 or 5 times a year. Ideally like 3 or 4 at most, or a couple times a year, because it is technically a neurotoxin. All right. So now it's generally quite safe over time, even doing it 3 or 4 or 5 times a year for many, many years. But I wouldn't risk it. Okay. Because eventually your brain might start producing less serotonin. We just don't know. There's not enough research on that. All right, so then on the last phase, so the first phase is the preparation and the build up. You're on the medicine as the second phase, and it's really kicking in, and we're in that acute window that we talked about earlier. Then the third phase is basically just the zen and the bliss state is what I call it, where you're just we've already dealt with the tough stuff. You've connected to your higher self, and you just want to anchor in and soak in and marinate connection with that higher self. And I see it over and over where my clients will just want to be in the state of bliss, and they will listen to music, they'll want to take a nap, they'll just want to lay down because they just feel so good. And they'll literally say, Mike, I feel so amazing. I've never felt this good. Where have you been all my life, Magic Mike? Or whatever. So that's what I usually experience happening with my clients, because we've dealt with the deep stuff and we've gotten on the other side. So just enjoy that blissful state. And that's why you don't want to have anything planned after your session. Generally, you want to have just a very wide open, enjoyable, pleasant afternoon, evening, whatever planned, so that you can just stay in that zone and stay connected, because you're recalibrating your nervous system. Okay? Then I'll call it the fourth stage, which is integration. And this is the days and the weeks afterwards. And this is where you're integrating in this heart connection. For us as guys, MDMA has the greatest potential, I think, for helping us connect with our heart. I could never connect with my heart the way my wife wanted me to without MDMA. Now I can, but I couldn't have done it without MDMA. All right, so that heart connection is really, really valuable, and you want to connect with your heart, and so you can be emotionally available. And like my daughter responds differently now. Like she runs and jumps into my arms when I pick her up at school. She never did that before, because I'm heart connected, and she can feel my love and my heart connection, and she feels emotionally safe with me. Okay, so integration is really important. And this is where we go through soaking in and marinating and reprogramming your nervous system back to a more bliss state and healthier relational state and a healthier loving connection. And that's where we're doing the sound baths, and we're doing maybe more therapy. You're doing Reiki, you're doing massage, you're doing You're working out, but in a way that creates joy and pleasure. Okay, you're doing yoga and meditation and breath work. So you're doing those sorts of things in the weeks ahead to bring your nervous system back and to repattern. And you want to show up in your relationships with a different level of love and connection with, assuming they're safe people. Okay, so that's the last phase of that. Integration is just as important as the actual experience. So I really want to emphasize that. And then the last piece I want to hit on is the safety. So MDMA is generally very, very safe. In fact, if you look at this drug harms graph here from Lancelet in 2010, you'll see the most dangerous substance that we have, most harm to oneself and most harm to another, is alcohol. And then right after that is crack cocaine and methamphetamine and all these other drugs, and then tobacco, and then you keep going down the scale and you'll see MDMA, or ecstasy as they label it here, is very, very low in terms of its harm to oneself and others. And then of course psilocybin is very, very low as well. And you'll see, I've seen in other graphs where actually aspirin is higher than some of these. So we're not scared of taking an aspirin, all right? And so you can't let the mislabeling of the 1970s, where the Nixon administration just carte blanche throughout all the research. It wasn't a scientific decision, it was an emotional and political decision. Throughout all the research, all the hope that the psychedelic community was bringing for healing and transformation, just because Nixon had an aversion to the hippies and the anti-war protest, which was, I mean, they were right. We didn't need to be in Vietnam. It was a horrible war that created so much trauma for so many people. But I'm not going to diverse on that or divulge. So MDMA is very, very safe. You want to avoid it with SSRIs and certain I can't remember the full designation, but you usually do the full intake form, and we check for contraindications. Okay, and so there's a pharmacist that I have access to that knows the psychedelic space exceptionally well, and so I will cross-check if there's any supplements or medicines that you might be taking that could be of challenge. Also, if you have heart conditions, that's one of the major things that you want to avoid. And then if you are bipolar currently and battling some bipolar or psychotic episodes, schizophrenia, generally MDMA is actually reasonably safe for those. Psilocybin is not. But I just want to mention that if you are battling any of those, that you need to disclose that before you work with anyone guiding you through an MDMA session or you do a ceremony. Okay, so that's really it. The safety is really good. If you take the supplements as well, you're essentially going to have no hangover. And that's the GABA, the 5-HTP, the NAD, even the magnesium. And the side effects are next to nothing. You feel great. Now, again, this is not for repetitive use over and over and over. You don't want to use it weekly or even ideally monthly. You want to avoid that, okay? Because you're programming your nervous system. And if your body, it's like taking too much melatonin, your body will stop producing it if you overload your system with it. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. Be sure to like this video, comment below, let me know their questions, let me know their concerns. And if you're interested in doing a private session, again, I don't dose and I don't supply, but you can apply down below and we can talk through those details as well. But I hope it's been helpful. I got into this again because my wife's journey, and it's been a privilege to help so many other people create massive breakthroughs in a way that they could never have imagined and they've been battling for years, if not decades. So let me know how I can support, and have a beautiful day.